For 15 years, I cleaned the wealthiest estate in the city. I polished Italian marble, dusted artworks worth more than most people earn in a lifetime, and got an up-close look at how millionaires live. But in all those years, I never saw anything like what happened the day my employer's wife gave birth to their third child. The baby was born deaf, and what happened after that diagnosis shattered an entire family in a way that even money couldn't fix. If you've ever wondered if there's anything money can't buy, or if you've ever felt that appearances can be more deceiving than we imagine, this story will show you that behind iron gates and security cameras, there are secrets so heavy that all the gold in the world couldn't bury them. Because what I confessed that night in Mr. Marcelo Tavares's study wasn't just the truth about that baby, it was the revelation of a lie that had lasted over a decade and a half, and that changed all our destinies forever. Before I continue this story, I want to ask you for one simple thing. If you enjoy hearing real stories that touch your heart and make you reflect on life, subscribe to this channel. Every week we bring you stories like this, from people who have gone through situations you might be experiencing right now. Your subscription helps me continue bringing these stories, and I promise each one will be worth your time. Hit that subscribe button because you won't want to miss what comes next. My name is Conceição, but everyone's always called me Cedar. I'm 52 years old, have 3 grown children, and I've worked as a domestic helper since I was 17. I started by doing laundry for hire, then I was a nanny, a cook, a cleaner, and at 37, I landed the job that changed my life. The Tavares mansion was in the most expensive gated community in the South End, the kind of place where the walls are so high you can't even see the houses from the outside. I remember the day of the interview like it was yesterday. The front door was solid mahogany, so heavy I had to use both hands to push it open. The floor in the foyer was white marble with gold veins, so shiny it reflected my face like a mirror. A giant chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals sparkling like diamonds under the natural light, streaming through the enormous windows. I felt tiny in there, in my simple dress and worn-out purse, but Mrs. Patricia Tavares greeted me with a polite smile and offered me iced water in a crystal glass that I was afraid I'd break just by holding it. She was beautiful, the kind of beauty that money buys and maintains. Perfectly coiffed blonde hair, manicured nails, skin as smooth as porcelain, expensive clothes that looked like they were sewn directly onto her body. She was 31 at the time, and I could see a strange mix of elegance and weariness in her eyes, as if carrying all that perfection was an invisible burden. Mr. Marcelo Tavares owned a chain of luxury car dealerships. He was 38, with graying temples that gave him an authoritative air, broad shoulders, always dressed in impeccable dress shirts, even at home. He spoke little, but when he did, everyone listened. His voice was deep and had that tone of someone accustomed to giving orders and seeing them fulfilled without question. When I was hired, they already had 2 children. Felipe, 9, was a quiet boy, always with a book in his hand, wearing round glasses that made him look like a precocious intellectual. Laura, 6, was the opposite. She talked a mile a minute, ran all over the house, and was always asking me to bake chocolate cake and would hug me every time I arrived in the morning. My job was to take care of the house, the food, the clothes, and occasionally keep an eye on the children when their parents went out. I came in at 7 in the morning and left at 5 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. My salary was good, much better than I'd earned before, and they treated me well, not with affection, but with respect. And for me, that was more than enough. The years went by. I watched Felipe grow into a serious teenager who attended a Swiss boarding school and spoke 3 languages. I saw Laura blossom into a beautiful, energetic girl with ballet, tennis, and piano lessons. I cleaned their rooms every morning, washed their clothes, prepared their snacks, and over those years I learned something about wealthy families. They have everything except time. Mr. Marcello traveled every week. Mrs. Patricia spent her days at the gym, in beauty salons, at charity luncheons. The children had packed schedules. And amidst all that rush, all that luxury, I noticed something strange. They hardly spoke to each other. Dinner was served at the long 20-seat dining table, but everyone looked at their own plate. There were no laughs, no stories being told, just the clinking of silver cutlery against fine china. Sometimes I'd hear muffled arguments coming from the couple's bedroom, always about money, about commitments, about appearances. Mrs. Patricia complained that her husband was never around. Mr. Marcello would retort that someone had to work to maintain that standard of living. And so life went on between the cold marble and the heavy silence. Then, in early 2019, Mrs. Patricia discovered she was pregnant again. She didn't seem happy when she told me. She sat on the kitchen stool, looked at the teacup in her hands and said, "Cedar, I'm going to have another baby." Her voice was tired, as if she were announcing another task on an endless list of obligations. "Congratulations, Mum," I said, trying to sound cheerful. She just nodded, but her eyes were distant, lost somewhere I couldn't reach. The pregnancy was smooth. She continued her routine, just with her belly growing month by month. Mr. Marcello seemed indifferent. He didn't attend appointments, didn't ask about the baby, didn't show any excitement. And that hurt me, because I, who had raised my 3 children through hardship, had always dreamed of a present husband, a comfortable home, the means to give my children the best. And here was a family that had all of that, but lived as if they were serving a sentence. On November 12th, 2019, Mrs. Patricia went into labor. It was in the middle of the night. I wasn't there, of course, but the next day, when I arrived for work, the house was eerily quiet. The overnight nanny they had hired to help with the newborn was in the living room, her face tight with worry. "They're still at the hospital," she told me. There were complications. My heart sank. "And the baby?" I asked. She just shook her head and said, "Born, but there's something wrong. I don't have the details." I spent the whole day cleaning that house in silence, a lump in my throat, praying everything would be okay. It was strange how that place, always so full of expensive, shiny things, felt so empty that day. Late in the afternoon, they returned. Mr. Marcello came in first, carrying the baby in its car seat. Mrs. Patricia followed, pale, her eyes red and swollen. She walked right past me without a word and went upstairs. I cautiously approached Mr. Marcello. "May I see the baby, sir?" I asked softly. He looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, I saw tears in that man's eyes. "He's deaf, Cedar," Mr. Marcello said, his voice breaking. "Our son was born deaf." I looked at the baby. He was beautiful. Rosy skin, dark hair, chubby cheeks. He slept peacefully, oblivious to all the sadness surrounding him. "What do you mean, sir?" I asked, trying to comprehend. He took a deep breath and explained. "They did the newborn hearing screening at the hospital. It came back abnormal. They repeated it, confirmed it. He has severe bilateral hearing loss. That means he can't hear anything. Nothing, Cedar. Not my voice, not his mother's voice, nothing." I felt tears streaming down my face. "But there's treatment, right, sir? There's surgery." "Hearing aids," he cut me off. There's cochlear implants, hearing aids, therapy. But it won't be like a normal child. He'll need lifelong support, sign language, special schools. And Patricia, she's not handling it well. She won't even hold the baby." My heart broke. How could a mother reject her own child? But I didn't say anything. I just took the car seat from Mr. Marcello's hands and said, "Let me take care of him today, sir. You should get some rest." He nodded and went upstairs, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. That night, I stayed late. I bathed the baby, changed his diaper, gave him his bottle. He was so tiny, so fragile. He cried softly but didn't react to any sound. I clapped my hands near his ear. Nothing. I dropped a spoon on the floor. Nothing. And that's when the reality truly hit me. This baby lived in a world of absolute silence, and somehow that shattered me inside. In the following days, the situation only worsened. Mrs. Patricia barely left her room. When she did, she avoided looking at the baby. Mr. Marcello hired a specialized nurse, but he himself seemed lost, unsure how to handle the situation. Felipe and Laura, still children, didn't quite understand what was happening. They asked why their baby brother didn't react when they spoke to him, and I tried to explain in the simplest way possible. And amidst all this, I found myself growing more and more attached to this baby. They named him Pedro. Pedro Tavares. I spent hours with him in my arms, rocking him, singing softly, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. But I felt that somehow he sensed my presence, my affection, my warmth. 2 weeks after his birth, Mrs. Patricia called me into the living room. She was sitting on the beige velvet sofa, a glass of white wine in her hand, even though it was 10 in the morning. Her face was thin, her eyes hollow. "Cedar, I need to ask you something," she said, her voice slurred. "Of course, Mum. Whatever you need." She took a sip of wine and said, "I want you to take care of Pedro, full-time. I can't, Cedar. I look at him and all I can think about is everything he'll never have. He'll never hear music. He'll never hear my voice telling him I love him. He'll never hear his siblings laugh. I can't deal with it." I was speechless. "But Mom, he's your son. He needs you." She shook her head. I know I'm a terrible mother, but I don't have the strength, Cider. I just don't. So please take care of him. I'll pay you whatever it takes, but take care of him for me." I should have said no. I should have insisted she seek help, therapy, anything. But when I looked at that broken woman and thought of that innocent baby who had done nothing wrong, I said yes. And that's when everything truly started to fall apart. I took over Pedro's full-time care. I changed my schedule, started sleeping at the house 3 times a week. Mr. Marcello increased my salary considerably. I took Pedro to appointments with the audiologist, the speech therapist, the pediatrician. I learned basic sign language to communicate with him as he grew. I bought books, watched videos, took online courses. I became, in practice, the mother of that child. And the more time I spent with him, the more attached I became. Pedro was a sweet baby. He smiled a lot even without hearing. His eyes would light up when he saw me. He'd reach his little arms out to me every time I arrived, and I felt a connection with that child that I had never felt before, not even with my own children, perhaps because I knew he needed me in a way no one else ever had. But while I surrendered to that love, the Tavares family imploded. Mrs. Patricia started drinking more. Mr. Marcello spent less and less time at home. Felipe and Laura were practically raised by the nannies and by me. And Pedro, that beautiful, innocent baby, was treated like an invisible burden, a stain on the perfection of that fake family. One day, 6 months after Pedro was born, I was in his nursery changing his diaper when Mr. Marcello walked in. He stood there in the doorway, watching me. I kept working, humming softly, running my hand through Pedro's hair, tickling his little belly to get that beautiful, toothless grin. "Cedar," Mr. Marcello said, his voice sounding strange. I turned. "Yes, sir?" He took a few steps into the room, hands in the pockets of his dress pants. "You take better care of him than we do, better than Patricia, better than me." I didn't know what to say. "I'm just doing my job, sir." He shook his head. No, Cedar, you do more than that. You love him. And that's more than any of us have done for that boy since he was born. His words made me uncomfortable. You're his father. Mrs. Patricia is his mother. That doesn't change. He gave a bitter smile. Parents are the ones who raise them, Cedar, not the ones who conceive them. And in this case, you're more his mother than Patricia ever will be. I felt a tightness in my chest. Please don't say that, sir. Mrs. Patricia is going through a difficult time, but she'll get better. She'll see that Pedro is a blessing, not a curse. He sighed deeply and left the room without another word. But that conversation stayed with me for days, because deep down I knew he was right. I loved that baby as if he were my own, and that truth both scared and comforted me. The months went by. Pedro grew strong and healthy. By the time he was a year old, he was wearing powerful hearing aids, and although he didn't hear perfectly, he could pick up some sounds. We started intensive speech and sign language therapy. I learned everything along with him. We spent hours and hours practicing, playing, communicating in our own way. And he progressed. Slowly, but he progressed. His smile lit up my days. When he learned the sign for mommy in ASL and used it with me, I cried so hard I soaked my whole shirt. He didn't understand that I wasn't his biological mother. To him, I was the only mother he knew, because Mrs. Patricia remained absent. She barely looked at him. On the rare occasions she had to interact, she did so with a coldness that chilled you to the bone. Mr. Marcello tried in his own way. He'd pick Pedro up sometimes, take him for a walk in the garden, but it was clear he didn't know how to be a father to this child. He was ashamed. I saw it in his eyes. Ashamed to introduce his deaf son to his friends, his business partners, his family. And that infuriated me. But I could do nothing but love that boy with all the strength I had. It was on a Thursday night, in March 2021, that everything changed. Pedro was a year and 4 months old. I was giving him a bath, laughing at his soapy little face, when I heard a violent argument coming from downstairs. Mr. Marcello's voice was raised, and so was Mrs. Patricia's. I dried Pedro quickly, put him in his pajamas, placed him in his crib with his toys, and crept down the stairs. They were in the living room. Mrs. Patricia was holding an empty wine bottle, her face red, her eyes full of tears. Mr. Marcello stood there, his fists clenched. "You can't take it anymore. Then leave, Patricia. Go. But don't you dare blame me," he yelled. "It's your fault, Marcello. Your genes. Your family has a history of hearing problems, and you never told me. Never!" she screamed back. I froze on the stairs. They hadn't seen me. "That changes nothing. Pedro is our son, and that's final," Mr. Marcello bellowed. "Our son is a defect, Marcello, a mistake, and I can't pretend everything is okay anymore." I can't look at that child and feel disgusted with myself for not being able to love him. Mrs. Patricia shrieked, her voice thick with alcohol and desperation. I walked the rest of the way down the stairs and into the room. "You're going to wake the children," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. They turned to me, surprised. "Cedar, this is none of your business," Mr. Marcello said, but without conviction. "It is my business, sir, because I am the only person in this house who truly cares about that boy upstairs. And if you two don't want him, then give me custody. I'll raise him, I'll love him, and he deserves to be loved." The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Patricia looked at me, her eyes wide. "Are you crazy, Cedar? You think you can just take my son?" "He's not your son, Ma'am," I said, and the firmness in my voice surprised me. "He is a child you have abandoned since the day he was born. He doesn't know you as his mother. He knows me. I am his mother in every way that matters." Mr. Marcello ran a hand over his face, exhausted. Cedar, you don't understand. It's not that simple. There are legal issues, social issues, issues of appearances. You mean, I interrupted him, you're ashamed of your own son because he doesn't fit the perfect image you sell to the world? He didn't deny it, and that gave me the courage to continue. I'm leaving this house, but before I go, I need to say something I've been holding on to for a long time. And after I say it, you'll have to decide what to do. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Pedro is not Mr. Marcello's son. The words came out and seemed to hang in the air, heavy as lead. If this story is resonating with you, imagine what comes next. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories like this. Here, we tell real stories of people who faced the impossible, and I'm sure many of them will make you feel less alone on this journey. Hit that subscribe button because what I'm about to reveal will change everything. And before I continue, tell me in the comments, have you ever been in a situation where you felt the ground disappear beneath your feet? Have you ever had a moment where the person you trusted most disappointed you in a way you never imagined? Write, "I've been there," below if this story touched you in some way. Your comment might be exactly the message someone else needs to read today to know they're not alone. Now let me continue. Mr. Marcello stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. "What?" he said, his voice a little shaky. Mrs. Patricia dropped the bottle on the floor. It didn't break, just rolled across the expensive rug, leaving a trail of red drops like blood. "Cedar, what are you saying?" she whispered. I looked at her, then at him, and then at the hallway door, where I could see the corridor leading to Pedro's room. 2 years ago, in October of 2018, I saw Mrs. Patricia sneak out of the house at 11 at night. I was here because I'd forgotten my wallet and came back for it. You didn't see me. You got into a black car, an Audi. That wasn't Mr. Marcello's. And you didn't get back until 5 in the morning. I saw it all from the kitchen window. Mrs. Patricia turned pale. Mr. Marcello looked at her, a mixture of shock and anger growing on his face. "Patricia," he said, and her name sounded like an accusation. She shook her head desperately. "Cedar, you don't know what you're talking about." "I do, ma'am, and it wasn't just once. It was several times. Whenever Mr. Marcello traveled, you'd sneak out, and 3 months after those nights out, you found out you were pregnant with Pedro." Mr. Marcello took a step back, as if he'd been punched. "Are you telling me that my son—" "He's not yours, sir," I said, my voice softer now. "I suspected from the beginning, but when Pedro was born, and the doctors said his deafness was genetic, I was sure. Because in your family, sir, no one has a history of deafness. I researched it. I asked your mother, pretending to be curious. She told me everyone in the family has perfect hearing, but Mrs. Patricia has an uncle who's been deaf since birth. I saw it in an old photo she showed once. And the man in the black car, I found out who he was. It was Rodrigo Mendez, your second cousin. That cousin she always said was just a friend, the one who also has a deaf brother." Mrs. Patricia collapsed onto the sofa, sobbing. "I didn't want to, Cedar. I didn't want it to happen. Marcello was always traveling, always absent. I felt so alone. Rodrigo listened to me, understood me. It was a mistake I paid for dearly." Mr. Marcello stood frozen, his face petrified. "You betrayed me, and you made me raise a child who isn't mine. I didn't know I was pregnant with Rodrigo's," she cried. "I thought it was yours. When Pedro was born deaf, I panicked because he was living proof of my betrayal. That's why I couldn't look at him. Every time I saw that baby, I saw my guilt, my sin, my lie." I took a deep breath. Pedro has nothing to do with any of this. He's innocent, and he deserves a family that truly loves him. Mr. Marcello ran a hand through his hair, breathing heavily. Why are you telling me this now, Cedar? Why did you keep it a secret for so long? Because I was afraid of destroying this family. But now I see that this family was already destroyed a long time ago, and the only real victim here is that little boy upstairs. So I'm giving you a choice, Mr. Marcello. You can accept him as your son, even knowing the truth, and learn to love him for who he is. Or you can let me take him. I don't have money, I don't have a mansion, I don't have an imported car, but I have love to give that boy. Real love. And in the end, that's all that matters. Mrs. Patricia continued to cry on the sofa, her face buried in her hands. Mr. Marcello looked at her with an expression I will never forget. It wasn't anger, it was profound disappointment mixed with relief, as if a giant weight had been lifted from his shoulders. I always knew something was wrong, he said softly. I always felt it. But I pretended not to, because admitting it would have destroyed everything. But you're right, Cider. I can't pretend anymore. He walked to the window and looked out, at the city lights twinkling in the distance. I'm going to file for divorce, and you, Patricia, will sign the papers giving custody of Pedro to Cedar. It's the least you can do. Mrs. Patricia lifted her head. Marcello. Please. No, he cut her off. There are no excuses. There's no going back. You destroyed our family, and now you'll have to live with it for the rest of your life. He turned to me. Cedar, I'll help you financially. I'll make sure you have everything you need to take care of Pedro. Therapies, special school, hearing aids, everything. But I won't pretend to be his father, because I'm not. And it would be unfair to him and to me to continue this lie. I felt tears stream down my face. Thank you, sir. You're doing the right thing. He nodded. And so are you, Cedar. You always have. Thank you for taking care of him when no one else would. That night, I went up to Pedro's room. He was sleeping in his crib, breathing softly, completely unaware of the storm that had just happened downstairs. I knelt beside the crib and held his little soft hand. From today on, you are my son, I whispered. And I promise I will love you, protect you, and give you everything you deserve. You are not a mistake. You are a gift. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you. 2 weeks later, I left the Tavares mansion with Pedro. Mrs. Patricia signed all the papers without a word. Mr. Marcello kept his promise. He opened a bank account with a generous sum that ensured I could stop working and dedicate myself entirely to Pedro. He paid for everything, therapies, consultations, the best school for deaf children in the city. And although he never contacted me directly again, I knew that somehow he cared. Felipe and Laura came to say goodbye. They cried, hugged their little brother, and made me promise they could visit. I promised, and I kept my word. Today, Pedro is 5 years old. He uses a cochlear implant and is progressing incredibly. He attends a specialized school where he learns Portuguese and ASL. He's a happy child, full of life, curious, affectionate. He calls me Mom. And to me, he is my son. Not by blood, but by love. I've learned that family isn't who gives birth to you, but who chooses you, who stays, who doesn't give up on you on the hardest days. Pedro chose me without knowing it, and I chose him back. The Tavares mansion was sold a few months later. The divorce was finalized. Ms. Patricia moved to another city. I heard she's undergoing psychological treatment. I hope she finds peace. Mr. Marcello has started his life over, continuing with his businesses. Felipe and Laura have grown up, they're doing well, and they visit their younger brother every month. They bring gifts, play with him, and learn sign language to communicate, and Pedro loves it. He doesn't yet understand the full complexity of his story, but one day, when he's older, I'll tell him the truth. I'll tell him He was born into a family that didn't know how to love him, but he found a family that loved him more than anything. And that's the only truth that matters, because in the end, love is the only thing we take from this life. It's not money, it's not a mansion, it's not an imported car. It's the love we give and the love we receive, and I've received more love from that deaf boy than from anyone else in my life. If this story touched your heart in any way, I sincerely ask you, please subscribe to the channel. Here, we don't just tell stories, we create a space where real people share real struggles and find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Every subscription helps me continue this work, and I promise that every week you'll find a story here that will make you reflect, cry, smile, and, above all, feel understood. And before you go, do me a favor. Write here in the comments one word, just one, that summarizes what you felt listening to this story. It could be hope, it could be strength, it could be pain. It doesn't matter what it is, because every comment down here becomes a chain of support for someone who might be going through the worst phase of their life and needs to know that people care. Write, "This story moved me," if you felt something. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far. It means more than you can imagine. Give this a thumbs up if this story resonated with you, and I'll see you in the next story. I'll be waiting for you here.